everyone, it's Robby Adamson, and we're going to be solving some puzzles today. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is free. I've been posting quite a few videos lately, and this video will be solving puzzles with Robby. And we're going to be solving some pretty high-level puzzles and explaining my thinking process. I don't always get these right, that's for sure. I've had some really tough ones lately. So let's take a look at some of the hard ones and see how I do today. And hopefully you can follow along. I'd encourage you that if in the middle of the puzzle you need more time, it's okay to stop the video and pause it and see if you can go a little bit more. If you don't want to hear so much from me, but you want to have a chance to solve it, that would be a good way to do it. So let's get started. All right, so again, what's the first thing we do? Yes, assess the position. Okay, so here we have a position where black is down a piece, okay, because white has 3 minors and black has 2. Clearly white's king is open, black's is not. Our queen is on h4. Looks like there could be some attacking ideas with knight g4. Of course, that fails right away to bishop g5 check. So bishop g5 is definitely a move to be concerned about. And since white is up material, it's not that hard to see that queen g5 threatening to trade queens might be a good idea for white. So black has to find a good way to play this position and make sure that he finds the right way. So let's check this out. So what are the candidate moves? We already said knight g4 is bad because a bishop g5 check just wins a queen. Queen takes knight, king takes, knight g4 check, king g2, rook takes f5, ef. That's just a whole rook down for black, so that doesn't look very good. The other thing you have to notice in the position is that we've got this potential pin here because of this bishop pins the pawn. So I wonder if we can use that to our advantage. Maybe. But the one thing I do see is that if we ever are able to play knight to g4, that we're gaining a tempo on the queen. That leads me to see some other things here, actually. Knight takes e4 also looks interesting because that knight does guard the g5 square. Okay, so if knight takes g4, and we're just talking out loud here, queen takes, okay, and then we don't want to trade queens, but we could certainly throw in bishop takes f2, or we could play queen g3 check, except that would allow queen g2. So we don't want to allow it. But knight takes e4 is definitely one of the candidate moves to consider. Anything else that we see here? There is an interesting idea that I'm just now seeing, now that I'm seeing it, looking at it a little bit. We're concerned about that square. Knight h7 is interesting as well. And you might say to yourself, well, why? Well, the good thing is, for black, is that the queen only has two moves to consider, which is simply to take here or play queen g6. Both of those allow black to take on f2. So I bet you knight h7 is the winning move. And notice, of course, that knight h7 does hit the g5 square. So there's no bishop g5 check that we got to worry about. So it's prophylactic, but it's also forcing, and that creates a threat. So if knight h7, if queen takes h7, we have rook takes f2, which looks absolutely devastating. Because if he takes the pawn with check, we have rook f7 back here with a discovery. So I think we're correct on this. I feel safe going for this. Of course, every time I say this, we get in trouble. But let's check it out. Aha, we were right. All right, and now we've got a queen that's hanging. Okay, but our queen is hanging also. So we got to figure out what to do here. So trading queens is not good. We already are able to use the tactic we used earlier, which was queen g3 check. And the pawn was pinned, so we can't take. But we still can't take here because this guy falls. Now, given the fact that I bet you an easy win here would be simply to take here. Queen takes, rook takes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Black's only up a pawn, but this d pawn is a goner, so it's really 2 pawns. That should be good enough, but I've done these chess.com puzzles enough to know that you got to go a little bit farther sometimes because you miss stuff. So what about bishop takes f2? That now the queen's not hanging anymore, and we've got this. The problem is he might have bishop g5 check. And if knight takes, we can force a queen trade. Takes, knight takes, and there's no discovery because the bishop is in the way. So we can't win the rook. So it'd be a real shame to have to take on f3, and that's the way we have to win. But sometimes you just have to go for it. So hopefully I am correct in this. Let's just take one more look. So if bishop takes f2, bishop g5, if the king goes to e8, we've got queen e6 checkmate, and black loses. Haha. So I feel confident saying this is the move. And we got it right. So let's go back and look at that position again. So the candidate moves. My instincts did not. My instincts on the right move were not correct. But what was correct is the fact that we knew that wherever we move this knight, there's a discovery. The other thing you need to know is that there's only 2 squares that the queen can go to. Okay, that always is a red flag for me because then he has less options. But we already saw that queen g5 was a problem. Okay, so knight takes e4 and knight h7 both guard the g5 square. Okay, and so it ended up being very clear that knight h7 was the move. We give him the check here, and we take here and here. And then for those of you who are saying, well, it's only a pawn or 2. Well, it is, but that's a big pawn, and so is that. And consider that Henry and George and Harriet and Frank here have not moved at all. And so the fact that black is up 2 pawns, I'll bet you that if you put this in the engine, that black is probably at least plus or minus 2 here in this position. So, all right, so yay, we got one right. It took us some time, but let's take a look at the next one. All right, so we got a king and pawn ending, and of course now we have to calculate everything to the death. So in this position, black really only has 2 candidate moves. King f5 is clearly the most obvious. g4 means that when the king goes to f5, there's no square to go to here, and you've taken away the square for here. So I'm quite sure that king f5 is the only move. But the question is on king f5, we have to calculate king d5, which is interesting. And then we have to calculate king e7. So let's analyze king f5 first. So if king f5, king e7, king g4, king f6. Well, isn't that interesting? If king takes h5, king takes h5, white plays king to f5, and black cannot move legally except this pawn. So the pawn would go to g4. White could play king f6 and it would be stalemate, or he could play king f4 and allow this king to come out, and we're going to win this pawn. So that's the trick that we have to be careful of. I saw that trick when I was looking at king f5, king d5 as well, because of king g4, king e5. But here we're actually much closer to winning the pawn. So this is just simply a calculation exercise. So let's check it out. So the way I always calculate this position, or these type of endings, is I always count how many moves does it take to queen. Okay, so let's go 1, 2, 3. All right, and then king to the f file, 4, or here, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it takes 8 moves to queen. How many would it take white? 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's going to be a rook pawn versus a queen, and I'm going to say, but we are queening with check, so let's check that out. So the question is the king close enough on f4 that that's going to work? So if we If the pawn's on h7 and the king is on g7 and we queen with a g1 queen, and let's assume that the king is on f4, this red square here that's highlighted, okay? The question is the king close enough to win that ending? And I think it is. Yep, we're just in time. So we're gonna. I'm gonna chance it here. Oh my gosh, and it didn't even make me calculate. All right, so we're actually gonna play this out because that's kind of very odd that it would stop there. So here, 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 here. Okay, we're gonna go here. King takes g4. King g7, g3, h6, g2, h7, queen. Now, for those of you that know these endings, if this king is on the third rank, okay, this is just a dead draw because white can simply go here and go king here, and there's stalemate tricks. But you know what the problem is here? Is if white plays this move, which is terrible, black has a really cool idea, and it involves going here. You unstalemate the king. The king has to come out, okay? You could check again, but I just know that this is now good enough to win. Here, here, king to g, king here. If he queens, if he goes here, queen, we have queen f7 mate, or we have queen here mate, okay? If he queens and gets a knight, then just the king goes here, and then that's just a win for sure. So that's actually an easy win. I kind of cheated a little bit. It made it easy. But what happens if the king doesn't go in the corner? Let's see, it goes to f7. Okay? It ends up being the same thing, actually. What we're going to do is we're going to check. And what you do is you get as close as you can. Okay? White has no choice. He has to stay close. Here, here. All right? And now this one is one tempo shorter, but guess what? It's still a win. Because of king here, queen, king goes here, all of these squares are, I'm sorry, this square and h7 and g7 are both guarded by this queen. So white has no checks that work. So if the queen comes out, it's just simply mate. Okay, so that's the answer to that one. Chess.com probably did not extend that one because there is because there's probably multiple ways to win, and the algorithm doesn't like multiple ways to win, generally speaking. Okay, so we have got 2 in a row correct. Isn't that cool? Okay, so we're going to keep going, and I keep going in analysis mode and not remembering how to do this. So we're going to go back to the puzzles. We're 2 for 2. Still not at my high rating because my high rating was 29.41, and we lost some points yesterday when we were doing the last puzzles. So let's go to the third one. Okay, and this position is, I started over, so I had to make this board a little smaller. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, so here, this is really strange to have all these pieces on the board. So black's down a full rook. White, clearly, if he gets one move, if he gets to make a move, he's going to win. So it's black's turn here. I can't imagine the move being anything other than queen takes h3 check. It is check. If the king goes here, I'm looking at bishop here. So what's going on there? Why is this so difficult? Well, the difficulty is that the rook is guarding the queen. So we can't win. We're not going to be able to win material if we check on d4 with the bishop and the bishop blocks. Okay, we don't have the usual discovery and just simply take the queen. However, what we do have is a very similar tactic to before, is that we've got this queen g3 check, which would attack this bishop once the king is here and there's a bishop here. So that would force the king to go here. And taking with the bishop, is there a well, one of the problems is this rook is hanging. So no, not so easy. It looks really good, okay? But we gotta do some heavy lifting here. So is there anything else we can do? So on bishop d4, bishop f2, rather than playing the sexy looking queen g3, which I don't think quite works because of king h1, do we have can we take the bishop on f2, king takes, and then rook f8? So we got to analyze that one, just visualizing that. So if rook f8, king g1, queen g3, well, not so easy. So we got a little bit of a difficulty here. All right, so let's keep going. So queen h3, king g1, bishop d4, bishop f2. If we take, and play rook f8, the king goes to g1. I don't see a. Oh, I guess you can. I guess you can play queen g3 there and take the rook for free. Aha. Okay. So queen h3, king g1, bishop d4, bishop f2. If we take on f2, king takes, rook f8, and then king g1 loses because we take the rook on e1. We check on g3 and take the rook on e1. And so the king has to go to e2. Queen d3 is not mate because there's a bishop on b1. So let's just visualize that. If we go queen to g2 check, isn't the king going to hide? What am I missing? What am I missing? Now, luckily in a position like this, black doesn't have a lot of choices, so we can actually cheat a little bit and try this to play the first move. And I'm pretty sure we can play bishop d4. But you know what? Now that I look at this position again, this is kind of interesting. This rook is hanging. It leads me to question, is rook g8 any good here? That threatens a major discovery. That's a discovered checkmate. Oh. So rook g8, rook g5. But then bishop d4 check, bishop f2, and we can take on h5 because the rook on g5 is pinned. Ooh, that's juicy. Okay, so this requires exact calculations. So this one you can't fake. As much as you'd like to fake it and think that you're going to get this no problem. Although now that I'm even talking to myself, remember one of the techniques we learned before was to change the move order? What if on bishop d4, bishop f2, we don't take the bishop, we don't play queen g3, but we play rook g8? And now if rook g5, we can take the queen. On h5. But then he has bishop takes d4 check. Oh my goodness. Okay, whoa. So this requires some work here. We've already spent over 5 minutes analyzing this, but this deserves the attention here. So if bishop d4, bishop f2, if rook g8, rook g5. No. We're taking. It's an illusion. We're taking on g5 with the rook. I'm sorry. Wait a second. No. Hold on. I have conversations like this with myself all the time when I'm playing. So just because you have to be so precise here and get it right. So we're going to take a look at this some more. Rook g8 doesn't look right. Bishop d4 check looks so much more interesting. But this requires analysis. We gotta find it. So we're going to analyze bishop d4 check because it's a check. We're going to look at bishop f2 because it's forced. And we're going to look at rook g8. And we are going to look at rook g5. We can take, but he takes on d4. So if we take on g5, queen takes, knight takes, bishop takes d4 check, king moves. I think that's winning. We're just going to do this. Let's see if we get it right. Okay, here, 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 here. Oh my goodness. Because I played too fast. Not smart on my part. Obviously, you should take the bishop first and then take here, and it's just winning. Yeah. So this is what happens when you try to walk and chew gum at the same time. Not that effective. So that's pretty sad actually, because we did get it right, except you didn't. You got to finish. So no excuses. Go to the next one. That was disappointing. All right, rook f4. So here we have black is down 2 pawns, okay, but he has a passed d pawn. d2 is is waiting to be played, but we got to calculate because we're so close to queening. Real quick, you notice the forcing move of rook takes f2 does not work because of rook takes, knight takes, king takes, and this knight is going to be able to stop any kind of advance of this pawn here. Sorry, d2. So the forcing move does not work, but rook takes e4 check is a legitimate threat. So do we have anything else we can try here? So we got the candidate moves for me are d2 anyway. King d4 and king d5. d2 looks wrong to me because we can take with check. Well, no, that's not so sure. Yeah, and if king... okay, we got to calculate. Let's not assume. So... well, clearly king d4 is awful because knight f3 is check. That just would be embarrassing. If king d5, knight f3, we have rook takes f2, which is interesting. But d2 is still intriguing to me. So if d2, rook takes e4. If king c5, he has rook e2. And if we queen, he takes on a2, but then we have a check on d5, which wins the rook. You guys all see that, I hope. We'll take a gander at it at the end. So if d2, rook e4, king c5. Now there's one of those famous checks where they try like rook e5 check. Yeah, it's d2. Wow, that's cool. And then we got to go king here. Can't go here because of rook d4. We're going to go here. Yep. All right, and then we got a queen unless there's something else. And we got it correct. Interesting. So why was that difficult to see? I think it was difficult to see because, so for example, on this, okay, he's threatening to play rook here, of course. But that's not the most challenging move. To me, the move would be rook here. And we need to analyze this, don't we? We'll finish calculating it. So we're going to go to the analysis board. And this will be the last puzzle we do because this has been kind of a longer analysis. So if here, couple things. If king here, that blocks the check. So white would have white would have rook d4, not even close. So what happens if the king goes to c3? The problem with that is that check. If here we trade, we're going to be able to sack on that guy, and white's the one that's playing for a win. Okay, and if black goes here, one of the unfortunate tricks is they have this move. I'm sorry. Well, they have that too, but knight f3 check is just good too. So actually, we're sort of forced to play the right move. So if they play rook e4 check, king c5, they sort of stopped here. Any knight moves allows the queen. This is where they They try to get the knight out in the previous variation. But what if we keep checking? Okay. King to d4 allows knight f3. So what if we go here first and then we play this position? Again, king d5 would be a major screw up because now we have rook e8. Although funnily, is that even a word? We might have rook d6 stopping the check, and this knight cannot stop this pawn from queening. So yeah, so it's a win. You just have to do some calculations here. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in to another solving puzzles with Robby, or puzzle solving with Robby. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do appreciate everybody for subscribing and just getting all sorts of people to comment on the videos that I'm making and stuff. And I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And until next time, I'm out of here.